2, 1. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, March 1st, 2022 meeting of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee of the Metropolitan Council. I am counting 8 members present. I see myself, Young, Allen, Bradford, Cash, Gamble, Nash, O'Connell, and Roten. 8 members. And then before we begin with the agenda, Assistant Director Honeysucker with Solid Waste at Metro Water wanted 45 seconds. I've agreed to 55 seconds of his time, or of our time, to give us an update on solid waste. Mr. Honeysucker, you are recognized.
All right. Good afternoon, Council. Quite a few may have noticed that we are trending in a positive direction with the trash service and the recycle being picked up on time under the positive leadership of Director Potter and the commitment from the administration. We are definitely committed to making this situation move in the right direction. We've assumed temporarily 10 of the routes that Red River previously had, and making sure that they are serviced in a timely fashion. We're going to continue to move forward with assuming routes until we right the wrong. So with that being said, I don't want to take a lot of time. I do want to open the floor for any questions that you may have for me within the division.
Any questions, committee? Council Member Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know there was some concern at the last meeting just about the perception that certain parts of town get hit harder than others. And I went on Hub Nashville and tried to see if there's a scientific way to see that, and there probably isn't. I know that you did some information that was much more scientific than what I did. As we get back into getting all the routes worked out, is there any kind of deliberate effort to ensure that maybe those areas get first priority in getting back on track?
Yes, ma'am. One of the areas that were mentioned as a hard-hit area was the southeast area, and we have focused on taking those routes that predominantly focus in that area, which has been neglected for several weeks at a time, and we're making sure that we've outsourced that to be accountable for those areas being taken care of. So if you'll notice by the complaints in our hub, they went down considerably. Whether we were averaging 400 to 600 complaints a day, we're down to around 200 right now. So, but predominantly the issues that we're currently running into right now are the backdoor complaints, and we're working diligently with our staff, asking our staff to work overtime to make sure that we can pick up those routes. And I would strongly encourage any of the constituents, please reach out to the council members or utilize the hub and let us know if that is the case by sending us an email, whatever it may be, to get that request into us, because we don't want any seniors or anyone that have any kind of medical disabilities to be have any other disruptions.
Thank you so much. We appreciate how hard y'all are working.
Anyone else? Or Councilmember Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. 2 quick questions. You mentioned the commitment from the administration. If you can elaborate a little bit on that. And 2, I know we had a conversation about getting some data and some metrics about where we stand with some of our peer cities or cities that we're compared to, as to do they outsource, do they do in-house, where are we at with getting that information?
Okay. All right. I'm going to let Director Potter comment on the second part about the peer cities. And the first one you were asking about was the...
You mentioned a commitment from the administration to assist you.
You want to talk about that? Okay.
So I'll do the second one first. We've retained CDM to do a comprehensive study of the trash pickup processes in Nashville. So we're starting from scratch. We're looking at every option that we can think of, and we're going to present a menu of options to the council about how to proceed. That will include an analysis of how much we should take in, if at any, an analysis of how many contractors we should have available. My preference is going to be to have more of a responsibility to Metro and a higher number of contractors with a much more adaptable contracting structure, so we can assume routes as we need to without penalty. That way we don't find ourselves in this position ever again. So this contract expires in November of 2024. So we have to have a new contract in place by then, and we will. But, and the final thing I want to say about that is there's a lot of technology that's available in this industry now that wasn't available obviously 20 years ago. And we're going to use technology as aggressive as we can on the accountability side. That way, if someone is missed, I would hope that the intention would be that we know first before the customer recognizes it, so we can get out there and fix it before the customer recognizes that they haven't had their trash picked up. That's the long-term goal. But we have the experts looking at it, and we'll be coming to council with a proposal. And then from the administration's perspective, they've been completely supportive the whole time, and I thank them enormously for all of their help.
All right. Thank you, Director Potter and Assistant Director Honeysucker. Let's see. Looking at our agenda, I'm thinking there will only be a couple of items that we can proceed with for a consent agenda. So I will name the resolution or bill numbers, and if there's anything you want to pull, let me know. RS 2022-1410. And then BL 2022-1117 and 1118 and 1119. Anything anyone would like to pull? I am seeing none. So I will read the items for the consent agenda. RS 2022-1410, Parker, Withers, Allen, and Young approves Amendment 1 to an agreement 210258 between the Tennessee Department of Transportation and the Metro Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure for the acceptance of work in connection with the early acquisition of right-of-way of 6 parcels for Phase 1, North-South Arterial Boulevard between Spring Street and Woodland Street. BL 2022-1117, Taylor, Allen, Withers, and Young authorizes the Metro Department of Water and Sewerage Services, hereinafter known as Metro, to enter into an agreement with Bancroft O'Quinn Jr., hereinafter known as Developer, to provide improved public sanitary sewer service through the construction of an improved stormwater system. BL 2022-1118, Van Reese, Withers, and Young abandons existing public access easement rights for property located at 532 Lamont Drive. And BL 2022-1119, Stiles, Withers, and Young authorizes the Metro government to adjust and raise casting of existing sanitary sewer manholes for property located at 5700 Crossings Boulevard. Is there a motion on the consent agenda? And second, all of those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? And any abstentions? That will be 11 in favor and 0 against. Now, that brings us to bills on second reading, BL 2022-1089, as amended by Allen, Stiles, and O'Connell, amends the Metro Code pertaining to the operation and regulation of entertainment transportation vehicles. Councilmember Allen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I would like to move approval, and then there is an amendment that we would get to.
All right, is there a second to the motion for approval? All right, and let's hear about the amendment, Councilmember Allen.
Thank you. I think I would like to defer to the council to describe the intricacies of this.
All right. Ms. Darby, you're recognized.
The intricacies of the amendment. There are several sections to the amendment. There are 8. One section repeals the Amendment 1 that was on the original bill. Section 2 deletes the definition of enclosed vehicle, and Section 3 adds a new definition of enclosed vehicle and unenclosed vehicle, and allows the Transportation Licensing Commission to determine what constitutes an enclosed vehicle. Section number 4, this is the section that applies to insurance requirements and allows the insurance requirements to be set in consultation with the Metro Government Insurance and Claims Manager. Section 5 of the amendment deletes a particular section of the code related to, I believe, seating and loading and unloading. Section 6 adds a couple of sections related to beer and wine and people driving the vehicle and providing for, I believe, beer and wine to passengers in violation of law. And Section 7 provides the Transportation Licensing Commission the authority to promulgate and enforce rules related to the chapter to ensure safety and traffic flow and other things.
Thank you for listing all that out. So in essence, this is similar to what we did at the last meeting, only we've refined it to some degree. Most specifically, what this does is very specifically give the Transportation Licensing Commission the authority to regulate the important things that we care about, like noise and enclosures and whether people are sitting or standing and the permit process. We believe that this is a compromise that will enable us to retain the authority at the local level, which is very important. And we appreciate the work that Councilmember O'Connell did in getting this whole process started and what Representative Freeman is doing up at the state to pass the official bill that actually gives us the legislation to regulate vehicles over 15 passengers, which we haven't had in the past. So we believe this package is going to put us in a good position to have authority over transportation, entertainment in a way that is fun for our tourists, but something that we as a city can live with and not be annoyed by. So I would ask for approval of the amendment.
Is there a second on the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment? Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, given the work that I have done through the winter, and I know there's been some discussion of this here, I guess I don't know whether to ask you as chair, the sponsor, the administration. My primary interest here is in approaching the state where we have a specific request in a no surprises posture. I do want to make sure that we get a clean bill with the authority that we are requesting from the state. And so I just want to make sure that the text of this amendment is well understood by this body, the administration, folks that are in the conversation about regulation, including the chamber and CVC, the industry, and of course our peers in the General Assembly. So I'd like some assurance that that conversation linking the state and the metro piece is well understood as we consider this amendment, please.
I have some input on that, but I will defer first to Councilmember Allen as the sponsor that we're proud
Thank you. You
sponsor
are
of
the
amendment.
co-sponsor of this amendment, so feel free to chime in. My understanding from Ginger, our liaison with the state, is that this has been very much of a collaborative back and forth conversation, and that adjustments have been made, as people have had comments between the state and Metro. So that's, I'm relying on our state liaison for that information, but I can assure you that there has been a lot of conversation back and forth on it. So I think that's an important question. I appreciate you asking it.
I'll give my 2 or 3 cents, Councilmember O'Connell. At our last meeting, we had an amendment that had been negotiated by the involved parties, meaning the industry, our partners at the state that wanted to give us the authority, as well as those seeking the regulation in the hospitality industry and the chamber and whatnot. Everyone was in agreement that that was good. There had been a lot of negotiations on that. But then I think the administration's feelings were hurt that they were not part of that because for the last 6+ months, they weren't concerned or didn't want to share an opinion on party buses and didn't get involved. And it is very frustrating to me that when we had done all the work to delicately balance all the interested parties and what everyone wanted, the administration came in and said, "Oh, no, 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 no. We didn't get to put our thumbprint on this. We need to win. We want to get a press release out of this because this is a winning issue with the voters." And it really ticks me off. But I'm happy to co-sponsor the amendment we have tonight that, you know, in one of the emails explaining it says, we're going to remove the amendment that I had come up with, but what we're doing essentially does the same thing with just one or two other minor little tweaks. That was news to some of our partners at the state that we were doing this, but we now have everyone on the same page. I'm very frustrated with how it went. I think it was nothing more than a political grab by this administration, and it's really frustrating that that things worked out the way they did. I'm going to vote for it. I think it does essentially the same thing with just a couple minor tweaks. That's my 2 cents, Councilman O'Connell.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any further? Council Member Roten, you're recognized.
What were
Or
the
Vice
tweaks?
Chair Roten.
What were the tweaks?
I'll defer to Councilmember Allen.
And again, I may have to go back to council to get exactly what those were. I think there was wording regarding the authority of the beer board and ensuring that we weren't accidentally saying that the TLC had authority over regulation of beer, but rather that the TLC issues permits based on what Councilmember O'Connell put together in the BYOB bill. So just to ensure that the language was consistent between these three different things that were coming through.
Councilman Roten.
It sounded like one tweak. I always thought there was a couple of tweaks.
I'll defer to Ms. Darby if she wants to elaborate on some of them. I mean, she went through all of them earlier.
And I'm going to let Ms. Zeitlin speak to the difference between
All right.
yours and.
So
Ms. Zeitlin?
the Amendment 1 that's on the bill deleted the definition of enclosed vehicle. That's in this amendment as well. But this amendment adds a new definition for enclosed vehicle, but also grants the MTLC express authority to define the differences further. It also provides this insurance section, some cleanup to the language regarding the insurance provisions. It adds, in section 6 of the amendment, it adds this language about allowing the driver of the vehicle to be cited for a violation of the alcohol provisions. And then was there? It tweaks that language, section 7, tweaks the language about the MTLC being able to regulate safety, traffic flow, and compliance with existing noise regulations.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you. So everyone is on board. Is that correct?
They are, and even the administration can get a win out of this. So congratulations. Congratulations to the mayor's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? All right. We are on the proposed amendment. All of those in favor? Those opposed? Any abstentions? The amendment is recommended, 11 in favor, 0 against. And back on the bill as amended, any further discussion? Councilmember Allen?
Thank you. I move approval as amended.
All right. And a second? Okay. All those in favor? Those opposed? And any abstentions? All right. That now brings us to BL 2022-1113 by Young. Amends the Metro Code of Laws to authorize the Metro Transportation Licensing Commission to set certain fees related to wrecker and towing services. This is essentially to move the wrecker and towing fees to be in line with several of the other things that the TLC regulates and let the TLC set those fees rather than having to come to us every couple of years to do that statutorily. And I will make a motion to approve if I can get a second. All right. And Ms. Darby, do you feel like there's anything else worth explaining on this? And it's essentially what we're doing is giving the TLC the authority to set the fees rather than us. Any discussion? Councilmember Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a reporting mechanism once they want to set the fees? Does that come here with the resolution or anything like that? Notify the council that we're raising fees or not?
There's not a formal mechanism of the notification of council. I think just like, I'm trying to think of other things, maybe like scooters and whatnot, where the TLC is just, that way they can set the fees there based on what staff is letting them know is the cost of inspecting and whatnot.
Thank you.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. I guess my question would be, what are the other fees that the Transportation Licensing Commission does set? And then just comparatively, Ms. Darby, if we think about the things that kind of come through here and before us, I know, that I find in the context of the budget, we're kind of seemingly off cycle. Some things are getting kind of updated fairly regularly. Others seem to lag. And it doesn't seem that there's kind of a concerted effort to look at all of those kind of across the full spectrum. So if you could speak specifically to what TLC does, if there's anything else that's in this kind of public works infrastructure space that we are still setting as a council body, and then to your knowledge, is there any effort to kind of comprehensively look at this whole space and get that on a cycle? So I appreciate Chair's desire to get these in a good place and get them aligned and get them updated. I just want to understand, where that fits, kind of the context, please.
Sure, and Ms. Darby indicated she might want to direct that to Mr. Fields, if that's all right, Councilmember, and I will ask Mr. Fields to kind of address this. And I'll say this is something that Mr. Fields and I worked on together. Mr. Fields.
The question is, what does the Transportation Licensing Commission establish versus what the council does? Historically, years ago, the council actually set all of them. At the present time, the only one other than this one that the council would set is booting. The Transportation Licensing Commission would set 672, taxi cabs 673, and I can go through 673, 674, 675. We do not, I apologize, horse-drawn carriages. You do not, if this were to pass, you would not, you still have the authority over horse-drawn carriage fees, and you would also have authority over the booting fees.
May I ask a follow-up question, Chair? Can you explain then why we're engaging kind of wrecker towing and moving that to the TLC side, but to your point, we're leaving booting and horse carriages on our side? I guess I'm just asking kind of for continuity and where those various pieces are in the stream of things.
And if I might chime in first, I'll actually let you know I'm Mr. Fields and I are working on an update to the booting legislation that would include moving those fees as well as some other updates to kind of make it a little more consumer friendly as well. So that's forthcoming. Now, horse-drawn carriages, I have to say, that is news to me. That's a fee that this body sets, but I don't know if Mr. Fields has anything else to add.
No, sir. Several years ago, the council started going this direction in terms of establishing, letting the commission set fees. So this is just, I think, another step along those roads of letting the commission set fees that are out there. But I know my attorney is up front, so I'll defer to her if I've missed anything, but I believe that's accurate on the fees that the commission established. Occasionally, I will say something, say, Billy, you need to look at so-and-so. But again, I know this has been the pattern the last several years of the councils.
Ms. Castanes.
So I didn't really have much to add, but I was just going to draw the council members' attention to section 2100-030 of the code, which says the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, with the support of its staff employed by the Department of Public Works, now NDOT, shall have exclusive jurisdiction over the licensing and regulation of all vehicles for hire, including but not limited to taxi cabs, wreckers, sedans, limousines, horse-drawn carriages, and other passenger vehicles for hire, and persons or businesses engaged in the practice of booting vehicles. the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, along with the Metropolitan Department of Public Works, in its role providing and employing staff to the Transportation Licensing Commission, shall collectively constitute the only administrative agencies for the administration of all laws and ordinances relating to the licensing of regulation of vehicles for hire and booting services.
Councilmember, all right. Thank you, Ms. Costanis. And Mr. Fields, are there any further comments, questions, discussion? Oh, sorry, Mr. Fields.
No, sir, I don't have any questions, or I will offer thoughts. Anytime the commission makes any changes, we do it through public hearings. We don't rush. We hear. Sometimes commission make decisions on the day it hears, and sometimes they don't. So we always encourage. In fact, one of the things that we anticipate, as you pass 677, I think, is the latest one with entertainment transportation. There will be public hearings establishing fees for the companies themselves, entertainment transportation companies. There will be public hearings establishing all rules related to that, including the fees they pay, as well as safety standards and that sort of thing, all done in public hearing. I will encourage you and really need you to come and share, because while the Transportation Licensing Commission is a community-based group like all the boards and commissions, we still need the elected officials to share. If you have specific ideas about things that we're doing, we really want to hear from you on public hearing days, and would be very happy to have you there.
All right, committee members, any further discussion? Council Member Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to know where the federal buildings may fall into this, particularly post offices. And because it doesn't happen at all post offices, but I know that on Church Street, being that taxpayers pay for post offices in the parking lots, and after 5 o'clock on Church Street, they out of nowhere put up signs and said that if you park here, then you're going to be booted and then you're going to be towed. And I'm just wondering how that happens and how do they select places. And I know there are few entertainment spots right there on Church Street. And it just concerns me that in that particular place that they have those signs. And I know that I've had friends whose cars have been booted and towed away. So I'm just wondering how they choose and require for those things to happen.
Well, Councilmember Hurt, I'm glad you shared that. I parked in that same parking lot the other night, and I was not aware of those signs. So thank you for saving me a trip to the tow lot. Mr. Fields, would you like to respond?
Well, when it comes to booting, any private parking lot in the city has the authority to have boots placed on the vehicles. Those boots only can be put on by licensed companies. The city actually doesn't have anything to do with where people are booted and not booted. We are not allowed to boot on public streets. The police never order boots, and truth of the matter is, if somebody's booted in a parking lot, under the ordinance, if they're booted one day, there's a set period, I think it's 24 hours before they could actually be towed, and then the boot has to be removed as well. So it's, from the standpoint, in terms of the federal building and federal parking, the federal government's going to trump and do pretty much what they want on their property as far as I know. They're probably not subject, I'll defer back to legal, I don't think they're subject to our ordinances or our regulations in terms of how they deal with their property.
Well, I'm asking because I had an event at one of those places. So I called the congressman's office to make sure that it was okay for my guests to park in the post office. And I was granted permission to do so. But I'm just wondering if there's any consistency in federal. Should it not be? If it's not welcomed in one spot, should it not be consistent throughout all federal buildings and parking lots, or local buildings and parking lots? And I understand the private parking lots, but when it's a public building. It just seems to me that there should be some consistency in the regulations.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. We're back on the motion to approve. All of those in favor? Those opposed? Any abstentions? That is 11 in favor. Oh, I apologize. That is 10. Next is BL 2022-1114, Mendez, Evans, Rosenberg, and others. Amends the Metro Code of Laws pertaining to the use of license plate scanner LPR technology to add a definition of, quote, personally identifiable information. Councilmember Mendez, you are recognized.
Thanks, Chair. So after a conversation with the administration, I'm going to ask to have this one deferred for 2 meetings, but I would think it's important to give an update about what that discussion was about, just so the committee can be up to speed about that, if I may.
Go for it.
All right, so, and I'll spend just 35 seconds talking about the 3 bills together, the 3 LPR bills. The point of bringing them was because after the debate we had for a long time and the vote a few weeks ago, it felt like there were some general principles that everybody agreed on, but weren't really perfectly reflected in the bill we passed. One of those principles was that this is about cars, not about tracking people. Another one was that the data was never, ever going to be used for immigration enforcement. And the other was about having strong civilian oversight. And these 3 bills are intended to get at those core principles where I think there was agreement by both sides of the disagreement of the bill. So on this one, for personally identifiable information, we consistently heard through the debate that it was about tracking vehicles and not people, and there is no definition of personally identifiable information under Metro law. State and federal law have many, many possible definitions, and what we passed a couple weeks ago allows the possibility that 2 different departments of Metro could enact totally different definitions of the term. And the idea was to try to standardize it. The concern I heard from the administration was that the definition that I proposed, which I got from one of the federal definitions that I found, was too broad and would undercut the ability to track people, to connect cars to people. And I, we ran out of time in that conversation. I know my immediate reaction was, I thought this was supposed to be about cars and not people. But I did promise to keep looking at it. And with that, I'm asking the committee recommend deferral for 2 meetings. I'm picking 2 because next meeting is going to be spring break, and I know we're going to have some folks out. So happy to answer any questions, but I am asking the committee recommend a 2-meeting deferral.
All right. Is there a motion to defer 2 meetings? And second? All right. Anything further from the committee? All right. Those in favor of a 2-meeting deferral indicate by saying aye. And those opposed? And any abstentions? I believe we're back up to 11. Yeah. All right. And then Councilmember Mendez, BL 2022-1115, amends the Metro Code of Laws pertaining to the use of license plate scanner LPR technology to exclude assisting with immigration enforcement as an allowed use of LPRs. Councilmember Mendez.
Thank you. This one, too, I'm going to ask for the committee recommend a 2-meeting deferral also, but again, just to get everybody up to speed about the conversations that are going on. Everybody will remember that we got a letter from Chief Drake and Director Al Alarcon before the vote stating that, quote, LPR information will not be shared with ICE for any type of immigration enforcement. And so the idea was to put that into the law. And I'm sure everybody's seen the council analysis that says that would violate state law. And this is the only forum I have to ask council some questions. So if you don't mind. So
let me first, if we're going to engage in a little bit of discussion, let me first get a motion to defer 2 meetings in second. All right, proceed, Mr. Mendez, or Councilman Mendez.
Thank you, sir. First of all, so there's two sections in the bill. One it says we're not going to share information. The other says let's not, we shall not use ICE's hot list of cars. And I guess I want to ask about the two sections separately. First about the do not share with ICE. As I understand the analysis, which sent me back to read the state law, I think the position would be not only can the council not say that we'll have a policy to not share information with ICE, also Chief Drake and the Department of Transportation also may not have a policy saying to not share the information with ICE. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, that's correct. The state law applies to a local governing body or entity as well as officials and employees and members of that local government.
I mean, I'm not inviting liability for Metro, so I'll ask this as a rhetorical question. I mean, it seems like then Chief Drake's letter, which announces a policy of we're not going to use not going to share LPR data with ICE, that letter, to the extent it reflects a policy, violates state law. Again, I'll ask that rhetorically because I'm not looking for us to get sued. All right, so I just wanted to get that out there about Section 1. About Section 2 is the we shall not use ICE hot list. That, I was a little confused by the analysis. The analysis almost read like the office's view is that Metro is required to use an ICE hot list if it's going to have LPRs. Is that the view?
No, that was not the intention in my analysis, that we're required to use the hot list, but to the extent that we are prohibited from using a hot list, it was my opinion that may not fit within the spirit of the act. And, smart people can differ in their opinion, but it could be seen as a policy that would be a sanctuary policy.
Thank you. And Chair, again, just to be transparent with the committee, I need to reflect on that. And I don't know when, if the council ends up deferring it for 2 meetings, as I'm asking. I'm not sure, as I sit here today, whether I'm going to ask for the bill as is to be passed or to narrow it to the Section 2 with this about hot list only. I need time to reflect about where I'm at on that. But for now, I would ask the committee to recommend a 2-meeting deferral.
On the motion to defer 2 meetings, anything else? All right, those in favor of deferring 2 meetings, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Any abstentions? We're still at 11. But now dropping to 10.
Now we're going to 10.
BL 2022-1116, Mendez, Roseburg, Allen, and others amends the Metro Code of Laws pertaining to the use of license plate scanner LPR technology to ensure data access parity for the Community Oversight Board. Councilmember Mendez.
Thanks. On this one, I'm asking that the committee recommend approval. This simply puts the COB on the same level as the Public Defender's Office and the DA for investigating citizen complaints about how LPRs are being used and about access to the audit trail.
All right. Is there a motion to approve? And second? Any discussion by the committee? All right. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? No. Any abstentions? All right. That is, I think we dropped down to 10, so that'd be 9. Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Mendez.
How do you do 9?
Because there's 10 here, and I voted no.
Oh, you voted no. I didn't know that.
And that concludes our agenda. All right. Just in time. All right. We are adjourned.